Mega Man. Both the series and the character are the very definition of classic. It took the platforming genre that Mario had almost single-handedly thrust into popularity and made it fresh by introducing flexible level order, a focus on ranged combat, and a whole ton of bosses. When they made 5 more on the NES alone, it was clear that this franchise was ready to explode, and by God, it sure did. You've got your X series, you've got your Legends, you've got your oh my god, is this even Mega Man anymore? But perhaps slightly controversially, my favorite has always been the classic series. Unlike basically every other Legacy series I love, I actually didn't really grow up with these games. I didn't have an NES for the longest time, only getting a hold of one within the last, decade. But I didn't just get an NES. It also came alongside a copy of Mega Man 6, and my god, what a good starting point. I love most everything about this game, and it's a shame so many people write it off for being, well, the 6th one on the same console. And you know, 4 of those I've still never beaten, so I think it sounds good to interrupt this stroll down memory lane and try out Mega Man 4. Just so it's out there, I'll be playing this on the Switch version of Legacy Collection because it's the easiest to record and it'll look the best. Why am I choosing 4 and not, I don't know, the first one? Because that game is aged like f***ing polio, and this cast of Robot Masters looks pretty sick. Despite being the 4th of 6 games that look virtually identical, this game actually did a decent job at switching the formula up. For starters, this is the first game to have an intro cutscene, which shockingly means this is the first time you didn't need an instruction manual to understand the plot. And even then, if you read the original manual, you were actually reading about Mega Man and Dr. Wright saving Monsteropolis, so really, this was the first time you could understand the plot. Likely because they knew that fact, this opening doesn't really include too many plot details for this game in particular, and more so focuses on setting up the entire series. In the year 2000X, which if I understand correctly, upsettingly implies that this all takes place in the past now, a bunch of industrial robots all over the world suddenly turned evil and went on a rampage. Since he's just such a good boy, one of Dr. Light's assistant robots, Rock, offers to be upgraded and turned into the super fighting robot Mega Man! With this power, he tracks down and defeats each of Dr. Wily's evil robots in an attempt to take him down. 3 times, and now in Mega Man 4, a new evil scientist named Dr. Cossack builds 8 more evil robots that are all dead set on taking Mega Man down. Also, this game takes place in Russia. As always, the goal of the game is to fight through the stages of 8 robot masters that stand in your way and reason with them. And by reason with them, I mean send a blast of energy into them so powerful that their bodies instantaneously explode. Something that'll make that much easier in Mega Man 4 is the new Mega Buster, which can charge up a more powerful shot. Yep, this is actually the first game in the series in which that was an option. It's always so weird to think about entries in long-running series that don't have things that have become staples. What do you mean Crash 1 has no sliding? What do you mean Mega Man 3 has no charge shots? The only other things that, as far as I know, are new here are the ability to return to the stage of a robot master you've previously beaten, and the hidden paths that can get you secret optional items such as the balloon and the wire. And Eddie! Eddie is the best. He's a little red robot that shows up halfway through some stages and gives you an item to help you out. Regardless of if he even gives me anything useful, I'm always so happy to see him. He's like a glowing beacon of friendship in the midst of these hell landscapes. Speaking of the levels, let's kick things off with Ringmans. Most of this stage takes place outside, either in the air or in space. The main gimmick is these platforms that start disappearing from one end to the other when you step on them. And look, considering what they based this Robot Master off of, I wasn't expecting the world of this level's theming. But what the hell does any of this have to do with rings? We have but one ring enemy, and I guess the mini-boss also has rings holding his platform up. On the topic of this mini-boss, f*** this mini-boss. I like the idea of this fight, but the speed at which his rings respawn and the tiny hitboxes of his constantly spawning missiles make it a nightmare. Eventually, I resigned myself to just spamming both buttons until he died and taking whatever hits came my way. The 2 fights with this guy are an unfortunate stain on what's an otherwise pretty cool stage. Despite being Ring Man, the Robot Master himself is honestly one of the hardest in the game for me. He runs and jumps around the screen, all the while throwing rings that work like boomerangs. The problem is that everything moves so fast that it's tough as hell to even dodge, let alone get hits in. If you can manage to though, the Pharaoh shot will be the most effective weapon to use, and your win will be rewarded with the ring boomerang. Next up we have Pharaoh Man. The stage begins in a nighttime desert where you have to travel across quicksand avoiding birds that attack from the sky, as well as scorpion vacuums? You know, you don't want your sand getting dirty with sand on it. Underground, you deal with an onslaught of enemies before getting to a long section that entirely consists of these enemies carrying you over spikes, leading you to the big man himself. If I was doing a Buster only run, Pharaoh Man would undoubtedly be one of the hardest enemies in the entire game, but thankfully for me, the Flash Stopper just ruins him, earning you the Pharaoh shot. Overall, I like this level. level. It's nothing mind-blowing, but it's got enough challenge to not be boring, and I wouldn't hate to play it again. Then we've got Toadman. The level starts off on a rainy, windy night before sending you into a sewer system of sorts, complete with currents of water and even robo-rats. Before long, you come up against a snail mini-boss who shoots bombs and his eyes at you. You also fight him a second time, this time having to deal with the water currents, which is a nice combination of the two level ideas. Toadman himself, in theory, has the strongest power in the game, the Rain Flush, which covers the whole screen in rain that damages you. In practice though, he's pathetically easy. His weakness is the drill bomb, but I'd 100% recommend going for him first and just using the buster, since landing a shot right before he uses the attack cancels it. Overall, I like this stage. The water can be a little annoying, but it's not as frustrating as it could have been. And onto another one that upsets me, Drill Man. This level is just a disgusting mixture of everything I don't want to see. Loads of spikes, annoying ass enemies, annoying ass obstacles. I swear I would have popped a vein if I didn't think to use the skull barrier to deal with these stupid rocks. The big drill boy himself doesn't make it any better either. If he spams his underground attack, I can deal, but I can't even believe how fast he shoots his normal attack, and he wiped my ass out quite a few times, even with me using the dive missiles. At the end of this arduous journey, you get the drill bomb, and goddamn, it is just not worth it. Dustman's stage is barely any better. It's like comparing trash to trash with a corpse in it, and what do you know, the whole level takes place in a trash compactor. Okay, on to the first jump, and f this game. There is no enemy in any game that I despise more than these things, and yet I feel like there's a variation of them in every old platformer. They're not difficult to avoid, they're not hard to kill, literally their only purpose is to punish you for having fun. I swear to God, I can hear the developers' laughs echoing through space-time because they know some jackass in 2020 just fell for it. Soon enough, you reach this part where blocks rise from the bottom of the screen as you platform over spikes, and much like the previous part, it isn't super challenging, more so just annoying. The last main section has a ceiling that moves up and down as you shoot through piles of trash, and it's just so boring. Thankfully, Dustman is one of the easiest bosses in the game. His jumps are super high and easy to move under, his suction attack can be avoided by just walking away, and his dust crusher can be avoided by just jumping with good timing. Both of these levels sucked absolute ass, but thankfully the rest are all better. Brightman didn't make me believe that at first though, presenting me with a stage that limited my vision. Luckily, it eventually randomly stops being about that for some reason and starts being about these moving platforms and these grasshoppers that jump on spikes. It's almost as if they realized this gimmick was stupid and gave up on it halfway through. As a boss, he wasn't too bad. He's certainly fast and it can be tough to get out of the way, but since his weakness is the Rain Flush, which covers the whole screen, getting out of the way is really all there is to it. He also has this attack that, as far as I can tell, freezes you in place no matter what you do, which is bullshit. If he decided to spam this, I don't know how you could possibly win. Either way, this was a pretty good stage. Remember when I said this game's Robot Masters look cool? I was pretty much just talking about two of them, Pharaoh Man and Skull Man. And thankfully for me, these two ended up having some of my favorite levels in the entire game. I love the aesthetic of this stage. The whole thing's made of bones, you've got skeleton enemies, and you've got what seem to be robot fossils in the background. Okay, that last one really makes no sense, but I still like it. There aren't really any gimmicks, and to me, that's fine. I like it when things are simple. I like that this stage is all about standard platforming and enemies, and that Skull Man himself just fires normal pellets in his own style and makes use of his skull barrier when he's close. Unless you're bad like me, using the Dust Crusher should turn this into a fairly easy fight, but that doesn't make me love everything about this stage any less. Ladies and gentlemen, Mega Man 4 is about to utilize its last Robot Master to make history. No, your eyes are not deceiving you. What you see before you is indeed a fun underwater level. I can't believe it either, but I legitimately had a good time playing Dive Man stage. The Mega Man series has long had my vote for best underwater controls, and that is fully shown off here. It makes you do plenty of different things, but since the controls don't make me want to blow my head off, I don't really mind, it all feels fair. And just to add to this level's magic, Dive Man is one of my favorite bosses in this entire game. I actually hated this fight at first because it was so hard for me with how fast he moves and how his dive missiles track you. But eventually I realized that as long as you watch his animations closely and do low jumps, you can find a pretty easy path to victory without even using the skull barrier. Oh, and that level music is just insane! In terms of specifics, I actually don't have all that much to say about this soundtrack. It was composed by Mine Fuji under the alias Ojalin, who knocked it out of the absolute park as Mega Man games so consistently have. Here's a list of tracks I didn't like. Here's a list of tracks I like. All of them! Dive Man stage music is certainly a highlight, but at the same time I think I could have switched that out with the name of literally any other Robot Masters level theme and the sentence would still apply. The single most shockingly good tune in the entire game, though, is the final boss music. Why is that shocking? It's an 11-second loop. She made 11 seconds of music, and it is the best thing I've ever heard. That cannot be legal. As usual, when you finish off the last Robot Master, it's time to move on to the castle of our big bad villain. And I gotta be honest with you guys, I've never been a big fan of these levels. They always look good and usually have some of the best music in the game, but too often for my taste, it feels like they prioritize being difficult over being fun and or fair, and the ones in this game aren't really an exception. Oh, ice physics, my favorite. Oh, look who's back! At least the bosses aren't too bad in Cossack's castle, and hey, look at that, he's in a claw machine. That's cute, ba-bam! You're dead, Cossack. Wait, Proto Man? What? You're not even in this game. Who the hell is this, his daughter? Who the f*** is Kalinka? Yes, as you likely guessed, Cossack was only a pawn in the grand scheme of who else? Dr. Wily. And oh joy, that means more castle levels for me! They didn't even give me the benefit of fun boss fights this time, and there is a special place in hell for this one in particular. After that, we have the usual boss rush, making me fight all the robot masters again. It's padding, but whatever. At least it's expected padding, I guess. With them finally done for, it's just me, Wily, and a 3-phase fight. The first 2 phases don't have the awesome music, so they're already on my list, but the second phase in particular can just die in a fire. The spot you need to hit him for damage is so annoyingly high up that I couldn't land a hit with a single special weapon, and I swear 95% of my charge shots just didn't count. The last phase is cool as hell though, with Wily lurking in the darkness, only briefly being illuminated by his own energy attacks. How the hell you'd ever do this fight without using the Pharaoh shot, I have no idea. But either way, it's an awesome finale that concludes with Wily down on the ground like a little bitch as usual, only to immediately get away as Wily Castle erupts into a skull-shaped explosion. I guess 4 games in, they knew they could leave the plot open for a 5th. And now Mega Man is suddenly on a train because that's the end of Mega Man 4. We're just gonna let him get away? Let him float away? Slowly? In that dinky-ass ship? Okay. Regardless, this is a good game. It's Mega Man. There's a reason this formula was so successful, and why it's still getting games to this day, even if we had to wait quite a while for that big comeback. When I think of video games in general, these games are what come to mind. Sure, sometimes they get weird, sometimes they get bullshit, but in general, I'll pretty much always trust Mega Man games for a good time. And damn, I love them so much I got this upgrade. With this baby, I'm